Hey guys, this is MTG Degree, my name is Luke, and today we're going to do our first deck tech. And I'm going to start off with a modern deck here, one near and dear to my heart, and that is green-white auras, or my more favorite name for it, Bogles, okay? So what is a Bogle? I've got 4 of them right here, and it is a 1/1 hexproof creature for 1. So basically, the goal of this deck is to put down 1/1 hexproof creatures for 1, then pile auras on top of them in order to make them outrageous, monstrous machines. And it's a pretty fun strategy, but it's one that annoys some people because hexproof creatures are really hard to remove from the field, and we put auras in here that make it even harder. Alright guys, so there's a few things that I want to mention before we move on. First thing is that this is a budget deck as far as Modern is concerned. It's a few hundred, but it's not the over 1,000 that some decks can be. The next thing is that it is kind of a tier 1.5 deck. It's pretty close to being in the top area, but it's not quite there. However, this deck has won pro tournaments before, and if it's good enough for the pros, it is good enough for your card shop. The next thing is that deck lists change, so don't consider the exact number of cards in the ones that I'm selecting as unshakable. This is a beginning point for your Bogle future. The next thing is, look at this card art. Like, this deck must be played! Alright, so first we have the Bogles. I've explained what those are. Second, we have Gladecover Scouts. So basically, these are just more Bogles. It's a 1/1 for 1 with hexproof. And so you've got 8 1/1 for 1 hexproof creatures. Next, and this actually rounds out the creature package, is Kor Spiritwalker. So this card is pretty sweet. It's a 0/2 for 1 and a white. And what it does is, when you put an aura on it, it gets +2/+2. But even better, as soon as you cast an aura, you draw a card. So even if it's countered, whatever, basically, one of the late game strategies for this deck is to put down a Kor Spiritwalker next to a Bogle that's already suited up, and you just start casting stuff on the Bogle, drawing more cards, and beating face. So this card is really sweet, and if you have to use it to do the beatdowns, even though it's not hexproof, it gets really huge really fast, because it gets the +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. Now on to the auras themselves. The first one I'm going to talk about is Rancor. So this is 1 green, and it gives the creature that it's suited onto +2/+0 and trample. But wait, there's more. This card just generates infinite value because if your hexproof creature somehow dies, when this goes to the graveyard, it returns back to your hand. So when you play your next creature and you need to start suiting it up, you've got Rancor already. Now, just because a creature is hexproof doesn't mean it can't die, right? We've got things like Anger of the Gods and such, and so we need a way for our creatures to live even if you're blanking the field in order to destroy them. And this deck does have answers. So the first one is Hyena Umbra. It's 1 white, and it gives First Strike, +1/+1, and Totem Armor, which means that if the creature it's attached to would be destroyed, then you destroy this aura instead. Now, 4 copies of Totem Armor just aren't enough. So this deck also runs Spider Umbras. Instead of First Strike, they give Reach, and it's basically the same card again. You want your Bogles to be unkillable, which is why some people hate playing against this deck. The next card we've got here is Spirit Mantle. So this gives the creature that it's enchanted to +1/+1 and protection from creatures. So this means that their creatures can never block, and it also means that if you block their creature, you do damage, but their creature never deals damage to yours. So this makes you basically unstoppable in the creature realm. The next card we're going to talk about is Spirit Link. This card is pretty darn interesting Basically, it's 1 white for an aura, and what it does is it gives your creature pseudo lifelink. When it deals damage, you gain that much life. But it's not worded lifelink. What it actually is a trigger. So let's pretend that somehow your Bogles already had lifelink. Then you would basically have double lifelink, because first you get the regular lifelink, you gain the life that it dealt damage. Then the Spirit Link trigger goes on the stack, and then you get more lifelink. So I have attacked with a Bogle, and then gained 50 life because of my double life-linking Bogle. The next card is called Unflinching Courage. So this is 1 white blue, and what it gives is it gives your creature +2/+2, trample, and lifelink. So it's kind of just a value and also lifelink aura, which is the first one that we see true lifelink on in this deck. The next cards are what really blow people out, other than the All-Star, which some people already know what that is. But this card is Ethereal Armor. What it does is it gives your creature +1/+1 for every other aura on the battlefield. So when you've got a Bogle and it's suited up with like 6 auras, which is not unusual, this one aura will give +6/+6. So in my opinion, a solid 4 of. Oh, and another thing I forgot to mention about Ethereal Armor is First Strike. Sweet. This card, Daybreak Coronet, is ridiculous. For 1 white, 1 white, it gives +3/+3, First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink. This is like the most busted aura ever printed, which is why we're running the deck in the first place, alright? And that ends all the auras. However, we do still have a few more things in here, the main one of which is your mana base. So, first of all, we run 2 basic forests and 2 plains. Now, there's so few basic lands here, just get the Zendikar ones. They're so beautiful, aren't they? So beautiful. I'm not saying they have to be foil, but if they were foil, that would be sweet, and I would be jealous. The next card is called Razorverge Thicket, and this checks, are there 2 or fewer lands out? If so, this comes in untapped. We are running 4 of the green-white shock lands, Temple Garden. These are awesome because, if you didn't know, they actually have the land type on them, forest and plains, and therefore they can be searched for when you're using fetch lands. And it doesn't seem like a big deal, but these make your mana so consistent. The next land is Windswept Heath. So these are fetch lands in green and white, and what they do is you sacrifice them and pay a life, and then you get to search for any forest or plains. So you can look for your basics if you want, or you can look for those temple gardens, take 2 damage, put them in untapped, do some cool stuff. Now here is my favorite land in the set. However, there's only one of them, and that is Dryad Arbor. So this is a creature forest. And what's so amazing about this card is, first, sometimes you end up suiting this up with auras and killing people, and that is hilarious. But the real deal with this card is actually to fight against sacrifice effects, because sacrifice effects don't target, and that's the main thing that will kill your Bogles. So what you do is you leave a fetch land unfetched, and should you ever come across a sacrifice effect, then in response, you tap your fetch land, take your 1 damage, bring this out, and sacrifice it instead of your important Bogle. The last land is the most expensive land in the set, and it is a playset of Horizon Canopies. These things are incredible. They can either tap for white or green and deal you 1 damage, or you can pump 1 colorless mana into them, sacrifice them, and draw a card. Now, this deck doesn't really have much card draw other than Kor Spiritwalker, so being able to take your lands and just sack them to look for something that you actually need is wonderful in that mid to late game where you've already suited up your Bogle and all you're looking for is more auras. The last card is 2 Path to Exile. This is a wonderful removal spell. People in Modern know it well, and what it does is, for 1 white, you get to exile any creature. Just boom, get that out of my face. And then they get to search for a land, which is actually quite flavorful because it's the path to exile, so they get a land out of it. But it's wonderful instant speed removal. You stop those Kiki-Jiki combos, you get going with your Bogle. It's an excellent card. Alright, so I've pulled out what I would consider the dream hand for the deck. So go ahead and just live this dream with me. So this is our hand. We've got a Gladecover Scout, a Hyena Umbra, a Rancor, a Daybreak Coronet, a Razorverge Thicket, and a Horizon Canopy. Turn 1, Razorverge Thicket, Gladecover Scout, right? Okay, you've got a 1/1 hexproof. Turn 2, Horizon Canopy. Add Hyena Umbra and Rancor. Now you've got a 4/2 first strike trampler. On turn 2, hit them for 4. Next turn, you put on the Coronet. Now you have a 7/5 trample, lifelink, first strike, indestructible hexproof creature. And that is the dream, friends. And it can occur in your opening hand. Alright, very quickly we will discuss sideboard. And the reason why is because the sideboard changes depending on what decks are favored against you, what decks are being played a lot, that kind of thing. And so this changes all the time. Just like the deck itself can change sometimes. But since this is so fluid, I'm just going to give a general okay sideboard, and it's my current sideboard. So first, 1 Ghostly Prison, 4 Suppression Fields, maybe that's overkill, 3 Stony Silence, because man, I do not like Affinity, and this kind of takes a poop on Affinity. 1 Grafdigger's Cage to kind of remove graveyard shenanigans. 2 Torpor Orbs, which stops enter the battlefield effects, so Siege Rhino, lifelinking stuff, and also more importantly, the Kiki-Jiki Deceiver Exarch combo is turned off by this, because when that token comes in to untap Kiki-Jiki, it doesn't get to do that, because Torpor Orb is saying no. And the last 4 are 3 Rest in Peace and 1 Erase, so some more graveyard hate, and hey, maybe you will come up against the Jeskai combo, and you need to get rid of that enchantment. So there are a few interactions that I just want to bring you up to speed with. So if you buy this deck, you'll immediately know some of the little more complicated things. So the first one is with those Umbras. So Totem Armor says that if an effect would destroy the creature, then you remove the armor, and then that creature isn't destroyed. But what happens if you have more than 1 and it would be destroyed? Some people would think, oh, well, both of them say if it would be destroyed, then remove it and the creature isn't destroyed, so you remove all the Umbras. But that's actually not true. What happens is, their triggers go on the stack, the first one resolves, and it says, okay, we're removing the destruction effect, and this dies. Then the next one comes on the stack, and then the creature is not dying anymore. And since it says, if it would be destroyed, then sacrifice this instead, then you don't end up sacrificing the other ones. So each one actually saves your Bogle. The next card I want to talk about is Spirit Link, and this is simply that you can put Spirit Link on your opponent's creatures, if they're like a big Tarmogoyf or something, and then that card, whenever it attacks you, will lifelink back at you. And so you can really save yourself from a lot of damage, especially if your Bogle doesn't need that extra power. Alright, well this has been our Modern Bogles deck tech for today. This is MTG Degree, my name is Luke, and I'll see you next video.